welcome to Climbing Consulting. Today's episode is something slightly different to the usual interviews and solo advice episodes that I sometimes do. Regular listeners will know that I ask almost all of my guests the same questions to finish their interview. And one of those is their advice for people like you. And that could be people like you who are just starting your career in consulting. It could be those of you who are 4 to 5 years in and are in the middle of your career. Or it could be those of you who are approaching partner or that point in your career where either you're looking to take an equity stake in a business or looking at going out and doing your own venture. Maybe it's in consulting, maybe it's in something else. My guests have shared some fantastic advice on this specific topic, some great insights, some great different perspectives, and just a lot that you can take away. So I thought, what could be better than actually putting all of this together? So today's episode is just that. It's all of the guests who I've asked that question to. It's their answers. It's what advice they would give to those starting their career, those 4 to 5 years in, and those just approaching partner. It's worth saying that to avoid you having to hear my voice multiple times throughout this episode, I have not introduced any of the guests. What I've done, for those of you who are maybe less familiar with some of them and want to just check back to see who you're listening to, if you go to the show notes that accompany this podcast on your phone, you will see timestamps with each of the people who is speaking and their advice. So if you're halfway through and you've just listened to some great advice that's really resonated with you, and you want to check who said that, if you flick to the show notes in your podcast app, you'll be able to see exactly who it was. And I'd highly recommend going back if there's someone in here who really triggers something with you and you think, yeah, that's some great advice. I'd highly recommend going back and listening to the full interview. As you'll hear in a number of these pieces, the guests reference things that we discussed prior in the interview and we've gone into depth in. And so if there's something that you really want to find out more about, go back, check out the interview. So I really hope you enjoy this, a slightly different format. I think there's a huge amount of value from all of the advice my guests share, and I'm really pleased to be able to pack it all into this show. So without further ado, please enjoy my guests' career advice for you.
I think we talked about maybe the individual at the early stages of their career, but I think it's that notion of patience over rapid progress. And say yes to everything, take it as it comes. You don't know what the opportunities are until you're in them. Just be comfortable as long as you're learning. Be comfortable with the pace of progress of your career. Of course, be ambitious, but you don't know all the answers. Don't get swept up in the race up the pyramid that so many do. Take the benefit of the diversity of experience that you'll get in this sector that genuinely you'll get in few others. And I think that learning mentality and ability to reflect on that longer arc of your career progression, the earlier you can take that perspective, the more successful you'll be. If I'm speaking to someone who's 4 or 5 years in, they've been a consultant for that length of time, that's a really interesting point because you're really looking to make a choice at that moment. And I think you're really choosing whether you're committing to this path in a big firm for all that means. You've already cut your teeth, got great experience under your belt, or is that the time to go into a line role and really deepen that expertise and broaden it in new areas? Because there's really crucial experience you don't get in working as a consultant. Or is that the time to really specialize and move into an environment more like in Gate 1 where you'll be perhaps a bigger fish in a smaller pond, but you'll be really liberated to really create something, perhaps in a way that you wouldn't be given the mandate to do if you were to stay where you are for the next phase of your career. So really make that choice deliberately, and don't just do it because.
Yeah.
And I guess the prospective partner one is the most interesting of all, because what I often see in individuals who get to that stage of their career is especially if they've been in a big firm, they've invested so much of their life and their soul and made so many sacrifices to get to the cusp of that point. They almost feel the only way to make all of that worth it is by following through and committing to that partner journey. My counsel would be almost like betting in poker, that those chips are already down.
Yeah.
So you've got to evaluate that decision on its own merits, and how much do you really, really, really want to be a partner in a big firm, regardless of what's gone before.
And
I
almost
think
strip away that sunk cost bias of
exactly that. And I think that clouds judgment, in my opinion, to a very large degree. And often individuals look at jumping off at that point through the lens of what am I giving up because I've come this far and it's within reach. That I can have all of the riches of a partnership and do all the things I've wanted to do when I've looked at the partner group and not focus on the opportunity that's out there and actually trading tremendous experience that those individuals have and doing something different at that point can be the most exciting choice of all. So don't make that a resigned choice not to. And I guess then going full circle on the advice to certainly the individuals 4 or 5 years in, or even someone starting at the beginning, it's definitely a question in the context of working in a big firm. You should ask yourself as early as possible, which is how much do I really want to be a partner? Because so much of the business model of those firms is geared around that objective. If that's not what you want, then take the experience of those environments for what it is, and then get different additive experience, elsewhere. And there's never been a more exciting time to make different choices than just staying in one place. Besides which, when even if they are successful getting to a partnership at that point, you find you just start at the bottom of the next ladder, and well, what do you know? It wasn't what it was cracked up to be in the first place, or either that, or I'm so bruised by the process of getting here, I'm now not sure I want it anymore, and I'm not as motivated as I thought I would be. So often, even after all of that sacrifice, it often doesn't feel worth it. So deliberate choices, I guess, will be my main message at every stage. Don't just get swept along or feel like you need to climb the ladder just because everyone else is.
Let's start at the entry level. I think the first thing is choose the firm that you think would suit you the best. I think a lot of times people take the job that they get offered. So try your hardest to get into a position where you're in the place that you think would suit you the best. And my advice is be selfish with knowledge and experience. So by that, I mean, just take in as much as you can. You've obviously got a very good academic qualification. You've done all the book reading. You've done all that stuff. Now it's the time for getting experience. It's trying to learn where to hammer. And you will only get that by trial and error and watching and learning and participating. If you're sitting on the bench, to carry on with our analogy, watch how the game's played. If you're on the field, obviously try your hardest and take the feedback you get from the positional play you take on. But be a selfish sponge, right? Suck up as much as you can from the people around you and be humble enough to recognize that while someone may not be as intelligent as you, they may be smarter than you in the context of what you're trying to do. And don't have any arrogance. Have the humility and just embrace it, because I think most consulting firms out there have hugely talented people in them. You will learn a lot by choosing the career that's a consulting career. I mean, it is something that you get a lot of really, really good experience. So, make the most of it. I think for someone sort of 4 or 5 years in, even before 4 to 5 years in, I think the earlier you can recognize in your career the value, the conversation we had earlier about the value of your network. As a first-year analyst, if you walk into a client, that's the first opportunity for you to build a network. I've got a young analyst here who's formed such a strong relationship with one of our clients. That relationship will stand them in good stead for the rest of their career. So I think if you haven't started doing it by 4 to 5 years in, you're a little bit behind. I think you should start thinking, how can I build my network? Even if consulting's not my career, that doesn't matter. That network that you build, those clients that you meet, those projects you go on with your colleagues, because they will go on and do different jobs and different experiences, and they may be in positions where you might need to get involved. And these things are hugely valuable to you. So make a concerted effort to really extend your network and make your network as powerful as it can be. I think if you're on the cusp of partner, or you're shooting at that now, I mean, it's not a job title, okay? you have to recognize it's not a job title. Probably all the way through to, say, senior manager, director, principal, whatever it's called in whatever firm. Those are all like promotions. I say to the people that I'm looking at for partner, I'm not promoting you. This isn't a promotion. This is me asking you to go into business with me. Okay. So you have to think about that step as a business person. I'm asking you to share risks and rewards of building a business together. That's what I'm asking you. I'm not giving you a title. I call yourself whatever you like, but I'm actually asking you to, you've got the keys to my house. And if you make bad decisions in the marketplace, that affects me. So when you on that cusp of making partner, don't think about it as it's the next rung on the ladder. It's just not that. If you can wire your brain to think of it as I'm going into business with the other partners, and that's a really important point. You need to look at those people and say, do I want to be in business with these people? Because that's what you are, right? And too often I think people see it as a next rung on the ladder. And look, a lot of people have a lot of successful careers that way, but I'm talking to the people that I think would make partner in my firm. I'm looking for people who are genuinely authentic business leaders who want to be in business with me. And I want to be in business with them. So it's a two-way decision. It's not a one-way decision, And that requires us both to want to do it, which means you've got to like the rest of my partners. I've got to like you. So it goes beyond just the economics of it. It goes into you and I have just met. But, if we decided we wanted to go into business together on a project, it goes further than just the idea.
Yeah.
Right?
It does the whole relationship side. Exactly.
Exactly. So it's crucial, I think, if you're on the way to partnership, make sure you like the partners you're going into business with, because it's just not a fly-by-night thing. It's a genuine commitment to be in business together.
I think the overall one I would do is don't leave tomorrow what you could do today, in general. I think we're very good at kind of going, when I'm ready, I will do this. You've probably just got to tip yourself a bit more than that. But I think at the beginning, I think it was what we talked about earlier on. If you want to, at the beginning of your career, try and understand as much as you can about all aspects of the job. Do the stuff you like, do the stuff you don't like. Just learn things and learn what's great and what's not. And I would say that about people, about leadership, about the business itself. I think that bit in the middle is absolutely where being fearless is a good thing to do. Because actually, what's the worst that can happen? It goes wrong. It doesn't really matter. Really doesn't matter. It feels like it does massively at the time, but it doesn't. The thinking about it's always worse. So just try some stuff, because if you fail, you can sit and have a gin tonic at the end of the day, and it doesn't matter. And I think then at partner level, that is about thinking about what makes you the leader that you want to be. And I think it's something I never really thought about. It sort of evolved. There's an amazing man called Ronan Dunn who used to run Telefonica, and he would talk about being chief cheerleader, chief storyteller as a chief exec, and thinking about what his purpose was, his personal purpose as well as the business purpose. And I think it was when I met him that I began to think about that myself. And I think at a partner level, absolutely work out what you're brilliant at your job, but work out what else you want to do with your life, what else you can do to influence other people's lives, to influence the life around your business. Because I think that's the bit that genuinely, for me, has given me a lot of joy.
I'll start with Sharon. She's itching to answer this one.
So I'll start with somebody that's at the kind of the partner level, or kind of looking to get into the kind of partner level. I think that it's really important, as you step into that role, here at Q5, we will always be asking you to think about the team, but you're only going to be successful as a partner if you can build and nurture and sustain those teams around you, because it isn't all about you. So kind of, if you haven't clocked that, you better, as you step into the partner level. For the early joiner, for me, I'd go back to something that I talked about earlier, which was kind of try and kind of enjoy the projects that you're on. Don't kind of, strive too hard for those kind of, what's my, my next promotion. Just really spend time learning from those people around you and kind of making the most of the projects. So I think I already said that earlier. And then a mid-career consultant, that one's the harder one for me.
Well, it's an interesting one because you could almost reverse. So for someone starting at the very beginning of their consulting career, I look back at some of the things that we did back in the early to mid 90s, and we were kind of allocated to industry sectors almost at the age of 22, 23. And before you knew it, you might have spent 5 years in financial services working in capital markets and think, well, I have no other experience. So my advice to people starting out, it doesn't matter what consulting company that they're joining is, try and get as many flavors of different industry sectors as you can, because you're a blank canvas when you start as a consultant, and try and experience working in the public sector, have a go in the retail sector, go and work for an infrastructure company, see which one suits your personality, see which one suits your motivational needs. And funnily enough, if you've been working for a number of years, I think you then need to say, what are the two or three you love best? Where do you find the passion? What industry matters to you? On a personal level, I first started work in the media and entertainment sector when I was about 32, probably 32, 33. I'd never worked. I'd spent 10 years working, and I suddenly discovered a sector I loved. Probably because I'm from a very sort of arty-farty creative background. I've talked about the English literature, but I suddenly discovered there was an industry sector full of people who loved talking about news, loved talking about current affairs, were passionate about that world, which I didn't get when I worked in financial services, and I didn't see in some of the other sectors that I worked in. So for me, I kind of came into the environment 10, 11, 12 years in. So I would say to someone at that stage in their career, start specialising in the ones you love best, because you will succeed.
You will soar with your strengths, as we've said throughout.
And then at the partner level, it's almost like starting again. It's you become a partner. We are within our own firm, and I'm sure this is the case in all other firms. We have so much respect. If you're 22 and 23 and you're joining our firm, we really do want to act as that avuncular, kind, compassionate colleague that is helping to mentor you and helping you to flourish. When you get into the partner ranks, it is much more, not aggressive, but it's much more, if you don't agree with something, you say, I totally disagree with you. It's much more...
hard-edged.
It's hard-edged. It's definitely more hard-edged, because
but it has to be,
the success or failure of the business is down to some of the decisions that you're making. So sometimes you might have a relationship with someone that's 12 years long, coming up through the ranks, where you've been on a very emotionally even keel with them. You say, look, brace yourself, because the world you're about to enter is a much more passionate one at times. It really is, certainly in my experience of not only working at Q5 but in other firms, when you get into more senior positions, you can have some extraordinarily expressive and passionate moments, and you have to be prepared for that and know how to deal with that.
So, new joiner, I would say, if I'm being really honest, maybe you should go and do something else before you get into consulting and have a bit of a backstory. Think about it at least, because, Struve, I'm glad I did something completely different in my 20s. I think it's almost a bit sad to lock down into corporate life too early. But, that's a glib answer. I think
you probably have more stories from your time.
That's a glib answer. But I think, probably not to be taken too seriously. But if you're setting out, frankly, back to that team question, really, just, don't take yourself too seriously, kind of massive growth mindset on, keep a smile on your face, and, don't be afraid to sort of chivvy seniors in the firm and sort of make it known that you've got ambition and you want to sort of understand what they're doing at their level. Don't feel don't box yourself down too early. But frankly, don't take life too seriously either. 4 or 5 years in, I would say maybe you are sort of starting to think about, is this me for a full career in this organisation, or maybe do I have an entrepreneurial itch? I'd just say look out, read, listen to Nick's blogs down the line, and just kind of frame some of those bigger questions, because they're going to start coming up on your career, aren't they? And then if you're at a point of taking equity in a business, I guess you're at a real fork in the road. It's either you're going to do that, or you're going to
set off and do it yourself. So, be really clear if you're going off on the internal journey, you're aligned to the values of that organisation and you're going to enjoy it. Frankly, it's back to some of those broader points. Otherwise, come on my retreat.
I'll start. I guess I'll give you the slightly. Well, I'll give you the one answer I'd probably say to all of them, which is that enjoy it. I mean, consulting is an amazing thing to do. To be honest, it's an amazing privilege to have clients welcome you into their environment and take the time to help you understand what they're trying to do and what they're trying to go through and how you might be able to help them. It's amazing to work. The consulting does. It's certainly my experience. It attracts some amazing people to work with. So it is a terrific career to have. Consulting can, though, and I know Adrian touched on this too. Consulting can become all-consuming. If you let it become all-consuming, it does become all-consuming. And I know periods of my life when it was all-consuming, when everything else sort of dropped away, and you have to just never lose sight of the fact that it is ultimately just a job. It's kind of you do need to exercise. You need to have the right relationships at home. You need to have a social side. You need to learn about topics outside of work. I love the idea of kind of pick a hobby and learn new hobbies. I think all that stuff is super, super important. And to love the diversity of it. I always think it's a bit of a shame when consultants end up going somewhere where they've ended up at one client for 6, 7, 8 years, and you think actually one of the great benefits of consulting is that you get to bounce around a little bit. You get to experience different models and different environments, and so I definitely kind of encourage people to make sure they get some diversity of experience in that from consulting. But it's a wonderful career path. It's I feel very lucky to have landed into it because of a partner who called me at 7:30 at night the night before my decision, and it was a wonderful place to be.
So I think for someone starting their career, which I've probably mentioned already, but it's really go in there and just be a sponge, learn as much as you can. And perhaps get quite a broad, even if there's something you're not sure about, to have a go, try it. And if you don't like it, that's not what you want to do. So you can then focus on something else. But I would also get all the training you can get, because some of the consultancies out there have some fantastic training. And I say that actually to all three categories. It's one of the things I didn't do as much as because you get so busy, you don't, but actually it's really good for you. And it's, even if it's a refresher, I just think it reminds you of things that you can get. It's a bit like driving test, isn't it? You can I'd never pass my driving test at the moment, but I'd have to, be getting back into the things that you need to focus on. And also I think it's, when you start out, if you start broad, you can then narrow down so that when you get to the sort of 4 to 5 years in, I think this is really important to think about how, what's the value you're creating? What do you want to be famous for? What's your expertise? What's your own brand? And what's the value proposition? So it's honing that area where you are, you can be seen as the expert. So whether it's, project manager, particular industry guru, particular capability, whatever it might be, then it's really thinking about and really sort of honing in on really understanding, researching, attending the conferences, speaking to other people who are perhaps on the same sort of forums, etc. But at the same time, it's always be prepared to adapt. So what you find is there are definite emerging themes and trends over time, and it's really making sure you can catch the wave. So whether it's sort of my world had been around sort of distribution platforms, technology, digital customer experience. It's always looking ahead. So I always think always take a bit of a helicopter view every now and again, and just look at what is going on out there, not just in your world, but out there. And that comes back to the networking, because you pick up so much of other things that are going on in your industry or outside your industry that could apply to your industry, for example. And as I say, keep making the most of training, because I think one thing that I sort of learnt a bit far down the road, but it is take time to invest in yourself in terms of improving yourself and not just improving yourself on the job, but also taking time out to do some of the training if that's on offer, or even asking for the training if you think there's a particular gap in your skill set or experience or what have you. And then the last bit, which is around the partner. So to my mind, in terms of, I guess, is always think about, you're not always climbing a ladder. You can be climbing a wall when you think you might be climbing a ladder.
I like that phrase.
Yeah. So I always think have a bit of and again, it's sort of that bridge between the 4 to 5 years and partner, but always think you've got a bit of a rucksack on your back and you're chucking a load of experience and skills and what have you on the way. I think by the time you get towards partner, you're getting much more into, it's very much focused on business development, building a business. You end up from being, if you like, the expert on particular projects to managing a number of projects. So you have to sort of leverage yourself up and make sure there are people who can, if you like, take on some of the role that you've been doing, because it's very easy, and again, I've been there, to be a bit of a hamster on the wheel, where you may be part of the selling the project, but then you have to get involved in the delivery, and then you haven't got the time to go and sell more projects because you're so focused on the delivery. So it's really trying to create, and this is what, again, consultants are pretty bad at, but it's creating that or codifying that IP. And the IP could be intellectual property, could be your methodology, your templates that you use, could be software, whatever it is. That really needs to be a time taken to actually make sure that's in place, so that new people coming in can really get up the ladder quite quickly in terms of what's going on. Or you've got more junior people who can learn on the job much more quickly, and therefore when they come to the next project, they can do a bit more and take some of the work off yourself. But essentially, it's really thinking about sort of building your business, and the people aspect obviously are key in terms of managing, coaching, mentoring. And I think the other thing as well, in terms of people chase title, and we've all been there. I've been there. And actually, sometimes it's good to think about, well, what is it that matters to you? Is it what is it about the role, because you've been doing it a long time? So do some people actually genuinely prefer to do the delivery in the projects, and being a partner is a very different kettle of fish, because you've got lots of projects, you've got a business with lots of people running the commercials, the negotiations, the contracting, etc. So it becomes quite a different kettle of fish to getting stuck into a project working with a particular client. So I think there's an element of, as you're approaching that time, what do you want to do? And the partner isn't necessarily always the right thing for you as an individual. So, and that's quite a hard thing, because we all aspire and what have you. And as I say, that's not necessarily the right thing. And I think these days, actually, it's being founding companies or owning companies or setting companies up. It's much easier to do than it probably was 20 odd years ago. So again, looking at what you want to do, sometimes people don't want to be in that corporate world, and look at, okay, well, and what's the framework that I want to be able to run my own business, and who do I need to work with that will help me develop the business going forward.
Yeah, really good advice. And actually, I'm going to be a bit cheeky, because what you've just said has prompted me on that piece around people going out on their own. I think, especially given your situation, I think there's a fourth person to add to this question, which is people who have heard this conversation and think, actually, I'd love to go out and be more of a non-exec, take a portfolio approach. I'd be interested for those maybe who choose not to go down the partner route or jump out afterwards, what that one bit of advice would be for them. So
again, what I would say is do a lot of talking to people, reach out to your network, their network, really so you get a really good understanding of their stories and their journeys, but recognizing that may not be your journey. Really looking into what, if you like, what's needed, where things have gone well, not so well. I mean, if you take like Carillion, for example, you have to think of twice. You might think twice about, because actually one of the big issues, particularly, so you've got financial services with SMR, senior manager regime, and the liability aspect, down to the individual, the personal reputation, which can be in tatters, because you happen to be on a board where something went wrong, which may not have been your fault, but it's on your watch. But I think from my perspective, I think it's really looking at, what can you contribute, understanding that particular organisation, understand, the industry that they're in, their issues. What is it that you can bring or you can contribute to you think you can contribute to that board, and really, and also doing your due diligence before you jump in, as it were.
Well, the youngest group, I'd be probably saying to them, why haven't they applied to us? I think probably for the middle group, there is an ever greater need to demonstrate that you're generating work effectively, positively contributing by bringing in business and things of that nature. And I think the earlier that you do that within a consultancy business, the more you're likely to get noticed. Because, that money talks in that respect. And, it's really great to be that technical expert, and you will get so far. But actually, if you can't effectively generate income for the organisation, that can be quite limiting to your career. So I think for those people in that middle particular area, that would be the other thing I talked about. And also not to really ever consider yourself to be too much of a technical expert, because that does tend to limit the ability for you to be mobile within your career. I think it's important to have very deep knowledge in whatever it is you're focused in, but also to be able to make sure you find the time and the space to be able to not get stuck in that in that area is really important, basically, because otherwise you get stuck.
Yeah, and I think with one approaching partner, it's actually be brave, because I think when people start approaching partner, they've quite a burden of risk, really, because they've being an age of coming to partner, they've probably got families to look after and things like that. But if they want to get to partner and get noticed, they have to be brave with their strategy, and they have to know the market that surrounds them and understand, how that market's changing, and not just try to kind of camouflage themselves in the norm in the hope that they won't make any mistakes, because that doesn't make the best partner. Yeah. And then just flipping back on apart from in the people beginning their career of why haven't they applied to us, the other thing that I would actually say is be knowledgeable about the area they're going in. We speak to Kubrick, we have the privilege of speaking to a lot of people in that position. And unfortunately, the ones we don't take on are the ones that, and there is a lot of them, that do not know what's going on in the market. And actually, they should be well read in the market they want to go into. They should be absorbing themselves in meetups and news and what's going on and who are the biggest changes and the why and how's it affecting the industry, or even when it comes to data, which is something we ask at Kubrick, how is it affecting your lives day to day? And I think that's really important.
Yeah, and don't spend too long on social media with all the buzzwords.
No, that's right.
Playing blockchain bingo.
No, that's right. Yeah, really know the market, because we'll see through it. So.
There are a huge amount of crypto blockchain experts now.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of very artificially intelligent people out there.
I guess for the one breaking in, work hard and actually persevere, earn your stripes, and don't just assume that everything's going to be sort of handed to you. I think that sort of business development side, especially within consultancy, my understanding of it is you've really got to go out and fight for it and prove that you can BD, so you can make the step up and move up to senior manager and director. If someone's sort of 4 to 5 years in as an interim, as an example, my advice would be try to take the opportunities and the projects that are really going to help you do the next step change if you want to actually progress at the same time as your permanent peer group are. So challenge yourself, step outside of your comfort zone. Don't always focus on the actual monetary value, the day rate. Sometimes taking a slight hit might give you the exposure and the opportunity to take a bigger and a better role in the long term. Someone who's reaching partnership point, we see this quite often where people come to us, they're at that level and they want to exit the consultancy world and they want to have their own portfolio of clients, almost effectively non-exec type position, have 3 to 4 clients where it's not 5 days a week, but it's going out and doing advisory work. And main bit of advice I would say is contact us. we're keen to speak to you. It's something that we're seeing a lot, and it's quite common practice. Clients absolutely love it. And if you've got the right delivery partner, i.e. a Deltra who can actually go out and be your extension, your business development arm, let's work together on it, because there's a lot of value in moving into that portfolio realm right now.
Well, just starting your career, I think I've probably given that piece of advice, which is be curious, accept every assignment that you come along, that there's something you're going to learn from it. And in day one, you're not going to be consulting to the CEO of BP. You're going to be doing research. You're going to be creating a storyboard for some slides. You're going to be doing some spreadsheets for a business case. You're going to be doing, some of the grunt work. But in there, you're going to learn lots. You're going to learn a lot about the importance of information and data and research and telling a story, and you're going to learn something from it. So at the beginning of your career, I always say to everyone, at least when you enter into the consulting world, you need to give it 2 to 3 years just to absorb as much as you can. Don't worry about where your career is going and where it's heading. Just absorb. So that would be for the first person. The second one, by year 4 and 5 in the career, you've probably had enough breadth of experience to know where you want to go deep. So what are you going to become famous for? You need to have an answer to that question. And you need to now be a little bit more intentional about the work that you do and the projects that you take and the ones you sidestep and go after something else. And you need to take responsibility for developing your tea. You've had some breadth, now you need to get some depth. What's it going to be in? What are you passionate about? What are you interested in? What motivates you? And be more intentional about the development of your career and the client work that you do. Also, the one other thing I'd say to both of those individuals at the beginning and at that 4 or 5 year point is it's all about people. It's all about relationships, both in the firm and in the client place. It's never too young to start being a good, not networker in that cheesy, sleazy sense of the word, but in that, build relationships, make friendships, stay in touch with people when you finish the project, take them for a coffee 3 months after you left. Invite them for lunch a year later. Say, I haven't seen you all year. How's it going at X? And so build up your relationships to the extent where you've made friends with people and keep track of and in touch with those people throughout the rest of your career. And to the person who's just made partner or approaching partner, you've got to be able to add more value than you get. So the secret to any of us in this service industry is to provide more value than we receive. And then you remain relevant. And so you should always be thinking about, am I giving more value both to my client and to the firm than I'm getting? And if you are, then you're going to have a successful career as a partner. And the final thing I would say to that individual is, you got to where you are by being a chess master. Now it's time to learn how to be a gardener.
Well, I give sort of broad advice that they can interpret. When I was a junior consultant, my first job in consulting was not at McKinsey, but in South Africa whilst I was waiting for my visa to go to Australia with a firm called Pim Goldby, which is now part of Deloitte. And a consultant then a sort of grizzled consultant said, there's only 3 reasons people hire consultants. And you've got to understand it at the beginning of your career. And I said, so what are those? So he said, well, they either hire it for extra hands, i.e. there's a crunch and we need somebody to help us rapidly. For specific knowledge, we have specific domain expertise about something, and that's why they hire us. Or the third reason is to tell them what they already know, but they want to come from an outsider. And I'd say wherever you are in your consulting career, you need to be answering those 3 questions for you at that stage of your career. So in the beginning, when you're just getting started, it's like, okay, how do I use smart so you're available as an extra hands, and how do I just be available and have a positive attitude? How do I start building my domain expertise? And the third thing in terms of how do I build and maintain and have the courage to be objective? Then when you're in the middle of, 3-4 year consultant, you have to redefine that as well. And probably when you're a senior consultant, the most important one is working out how to be the outsider telling people the tough message, which they know, but in order to move the group dynamics forward or the business forward, it's better if it comes from the outside, even if you run the risk of borrowing your watch to tell you the time. But, those, and actually when I look back at most of the work that I was involved as a consultant, or to the extent that we use them at Hiscox. They all fall into those 3 buckets. Extra hands because we have a crunch and we need some smart people rapidly for a specific task. Specific knowledge, or to tell us what I know to be true, but in order to stimulate executive debate, the beginning of the conversation is better. It's being initiated by a third party, and then what do you respond to that idea versus what do you think of my idea as CEO or their idea if they've been the initiator. So that would be my advice. And he gave me one other piece of advice, which is also worth calling in mind. It's just trying to get hold of a CEO of a prospective client. So he phoned up and spoke to his secretary. And he said, well, sorry, XYZ's on the telephone. He'll be another sort of 10 or 15 minutes. And he said, that's okay, I'll hold. And literally, we held for 20 minutes. Whilst the secretary, every 5 minutes, are you sure you're happy to hold? No, I'm happy to hold. And eventually, the CEO, whether it was an excuse or real, it didn't matter. He had no choice but to take the call. And I said to him, so why did you do that? He said, what you have to remember when you're selling to CEOs, they're busy people. At least when he's on the phone, I know he's in the office. I know he can find time to take my call. If I say I'll call back tomorrow, he could be on an away day. He could be in a plane overseas. He could be doing something else. Getting to speak to these people is the big challenge. And so that was the other thing that he gave me. And I think, and I use both of those things today, which is if I need to speak to somebody, how do I get hold of them? When's the best time? How do I make friends with their secretary? And when it comes back from a consulting services thing, those 3 reasons are when somebody says, we need a consultant, Bronek, I, in my own head, say, so why are we hiring these people?
I think you might have just got yourself a number more calls from consultants who are willing to hold. And it was something that I certainly took as advice right back at the start, and obviously had such an important impact on what ultimately became your career and Hiscox, is when should people start, or how do people start cultivating that ability to, I've heard it called talk truth to power, but when and how do people develop that ability, and when should they exercise that ability to tell clients you're wrong?
When I was a junior consultant, I hated it when clients disagreed with us, because I thought to me, well, it's so obvious. We've done the analysis and the answer is 42 or whatever, and you should be doing that. Then actually, after I had experience, I realized that it's way better when you get involved in a disagreement or a dialogue with customers or with clients, because that means they've engaged. And if they've engaged their brains, they will be thinking about it, and by working together, you come up with a better answer. And so to me, you either have the self-confidence or the belief in your analysis or your work, quality of your work, to be engaged and talk to clients. Because the con side of that is the worst clients are the ones who say, yeah, thank you very much. And you haven't engaged them intellectually. They haven't bothered solving the problem. And those are the reports that end up
on the shelf,
never followed through. And as a consultant, you may get paid well for reports that end up on the shelf, but there's no satisfaction in that. You want people to do something. And having that, it comes, I think, based on the grounding in how confident you are in the work that you've done. And if you've done that well and you've got a good foundation, you should then, even if you're slightly nervous of them and they are more powerful and older than you should then have, based on the facts that I've seen, this is what we would recommend you should do. And I think the foundation of good consulting work should give you the ability to talk truth to power. But if you're a nervous disposition, you'll never get there, and you'll never be a great consultant.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Climb in Consulting podcast. If you did, I would be very grateful if you could leave a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or your podcast platform of choice, whichever one you may be using. And please also share this with anyone that you think could benefit from hearing today's interview. If you want to get in touch or give me any feedback about the podcast, please feel free to drop me an email. It's nick@climbinconsulting.com, and I look forward to hearing from you.